For the first time in a while, at least for me, it feels like a really happy, pleasant surprise has landed at our feet. Reviews for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle have come out, and they actually are quite good. They're sitting in like the B to B plus range, which is like 85 to 90. And so PC scores are sitting at 87, Xbox at 86. To be fair, because I know some people are going to point it out, yes, it is standard for like Metacritic scores to drop by a point or two, except in rare situations like Baldur's Gate, which I think actually went up in the weeks after and months after it launched. But typically, these platforms send review codes to outlets they think will be favorable and all that. So typically after the game goes out, the score will drop a little bit. As the more critical people review it, the average will drop just a tad. But even that still suggests that it's going to be floating in that like 85 range, which is without a doubt a good score. Okay, it's a good score. It's not a masterpiece score, but that is a good score. That is a good game. Now, I think what's so fascinating is that so many of us were just so braced for another AAA, like big budget Disney involved disappointment that we were just ready for it. We were braced. We were prepared for this to come out and be like a 65. That's kind of what I was worried for. My final prediction on the members only stream right before, like 2 minutes before the reviews went up, I said 74. That's what I think. And I'm very glad to have been wrong. I mean, a lot of people are coming out saying they really, really like it. Some people are even saying this is their game of the year. And we're going to look at a couple of these to get an idea of why they're saying that. But I do want to just like remind everybody, this is what's great about going in with tempered expectations, because now I'm like giddy. I'm excited to see this and I'm excited to try it. Whereas I saw some people that thought this was going to be like a 10 out of 10 masterpiece who were complaining that it's really disappointing seeing the score at 86. Like there were some people that were bummed out by this score because they allowed themselves to get hyped to the point where they thought it was going to be like a 98 or something. And so having tempered expectations allows you to be all the more excited when you see something like this, which is a pleasant surprise. So we'll look through some of these. Some of these are interesting. There are some common threads through a lot of these. A handful of these sites I just don't frankly recognize because they are from other countries. Radio Times, I'm not sure what that is. Pure Xbox gave it a 6 out of 10. Ever since we caught wind of Machine Games making an Indiana Jones title, we've been very excited about the prospect, but ultimately we're a little disappointed in the final product. The overall experience isn't bad. It successfully sells the Indiana Jones thing, blah, blah, blah. So we'll look at these. I think probably the easiest one. I don't want to interfere with any individual creator's review, but a big like 18 million sub channel, I feel more comfortable looking at their reviews. So let's see what IGN said about it in their review. Let's check it out.
Jones, Professor Archaeology Department, Marshall College, Bedford, Connecticut.
Yeah?
Connecticut. How dare you?
You ain't no nun, sweetheart.
It's been over 30 years since I wore out my VHS copy of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Since then, the film franchise has been in a state of escalation.
Shia. I always forget Shia LaBeouf was in that, dude. Oh, man. What was that, 2008? Man, yeah, without a doubt, Indiana Jones has been mistreated, I would say, in recent memory. Not given a fair shot. I think that's fair.
You go after uncovering the literal holy grail. Aliens, then time machines, apparently. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is the perfect antidote to all of this. One that uses its own figurative dial of destiny to propel us back in time to Indy's prime. The result is easily one of the best indie stories across both the games and the movies, with painstakingly detailed environments, wonderfully atmospheric tomb raiding and puzzle solving, a pitch-perfect score,
Egypt
and
stuff.
quite possibly...
Watch out, Luke, Skitty. Egypt stuff. This is one of the things that is perhaps the most pleasant surprise. And again, this is coming from games journalists, so you never know whether to take this seriously or not. But they say that the puzzles are actually pretty well done. Now, is that well done for somebody playing on journalist difficulty? Or is that just generally a well-done puzzle? Time will tell. But typically, if they're really bad, we do find out about that. So it seems like the puzzles are well thought out. The environments are much bigger and broader than people were kind of expecting. There is a good amount of things to do that is like optional in certain areas. There's going to be extra tombs or extra like artifacts to discover and all of that.
Greatest punch sound effect in the business.
Jesus Christ almighty. That was aggressive. Did he turn up the volume? That was a lot.
Punch sound effect in the business. While it does stumble occasionally as a stealth-focused sneak 'em up, The Great Circle is an otherwise grand and gorgeous globe-trotting adventure that left me giddy as a schoolboy. Yes, it's true that bringing Indiana Jones back to the big screen twice after he literally rode off into the sunset was probably a poor choice.
That was the thing I remember with Last Crusade. Like, it was so clear that was supposed to be the end of the story for Indy, and you just like move on. It's okay. That's the end of Harrison Ford's time with it. He wants to do other stuff. And then they cut him a big ass check and he came back. And then they did another one and he came back again. It's like sometimes it's okay to just leave things be. But
having Machine Games craft an indie experience inspired by all the best games in that
I did see somebody on Twitter saying that, how could you give this game a good score? Look, Indy doesn't even hold the pistol right. I'm going to rewind it. Somebody looked at this and thought this was a big blunder, a big oversight.
Having
They're like, how could you possibly give this a good score? That's not how you hold guns.
Machine Games craft an indie experience inspired by all the best games in that development team's past, Bethesda chose wisely. Machine Games' most immediate legacy is the modern Wolfenstein series, and there's certainly some of that on show in The Great Circle. Like The New Order in its excellent prequel and sequel, The Great Circle is first-person and highly story-driven. And I'd wager if there's anyone who hates Nazis as much as Indy, it's the Gestapo-gutting, SS-slaying BJ Blazkowicz.
I will saw your head off with this here appliance, you hear me?
The Great Circle is not, however, a bloodthirsty exercise in double-fisted lead-flinging fury.
Tombs, get ready, there's tombs. Luke's gonna geek out.
Unlike Wolfenstein, The Great Circle's focus is patient and slower-paced exploration and stealth, where guns are rarely and barely a vibe.
What the hell was that? He's standing like right in front of him. Is he looking for you as you stand? Maybe what this is, he's in a, okay, he's in a costume thing. He's in a disguise. See the little collar thing? Okay, see, that's important to get. Because I was like, if he's just Indiana Jones standing in front of an enemy and the enemy can't see him from this distance, how is this a 9 out of 10? But if he's in a disguise and that's why he doesn't see it, that could explain it. At least that better be what this is. Otherwise, like, if he actually should be pulling aggro here and they behave like that, that's going to be a problem, but we'll see.
Barely and barely a viable option.
That little guy packed a punch.
That said, with the founding members of Machine Games all hailing from fellow Swedish studio Starbreeze, Machine Games' DNA admittedly runs much deeper than Wolfenstein. For many of the team, it dates back to 2004's outstanding and highly acclaimed The Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay. Riddick's first-person fisticuffs and adventure elements appear to have been a huge inspiration on The Great Circle, and it's refreshing to be playing a game like Butcher Bay again, particularly when it's done with this much verve and commitment to a storied franchise. For clarity, I doubt anybody would have been shocked to see an Indiana Jones game in 2024 arrive as a clone of the blockbuster Uncharted series. It certainly wouldn't have been unprecedented. After all, both 1999's Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine and 2003's Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb both followed a fairly strict Tomb Raider template. Pivoting to pay tribute to the man who usurped Lara as the premier grave-robbing vagabond of modern video games would hardly have been surprising, particularly as games today have become increasingly homogenized overall.
The game reveals the secret.
Oh, are we playing a game, Jones? I love games.
But The Great Circle isn't an Uncharted clone. and it's all the better for it. It's an Indiana Jones game I didn't even know I wanted, and sometimes that's the best surprise. I like highly cinematic, quality third-person shooters as much as the next man, but not every game needs to be one. And besides, you can do a lot worse than taking notes from Butcher Bay, another licensed tie-in with the extremely rare distinction of being even better than the film upon which it was based.
Yeah, I do think it was certainly a big risk to try and go the route of something like this instead of what I think a lot of people expected, which was Uncharted, go third-person adventure, go for big budget set pieces, that type of thing. The reviews are pretty consistent in suggesting that the stealth focus does not like detract from the indie experience. Like the set pieces, the story, the action is there. It's much more sparse, but it's paced in between the stealth stuff, so it doesn't actually affect it too much. And that's perhaps a surprise to me. I would have thought that doing an indie game, but as a stealth game primarily, was just a weird choice. But the people who have played it say that it works pretty well.
The first-person perspective blesses...
Can I check what other games this guy reviewed? Yeah, so this guy in particular, we looked at it on the members only stream yesterday. He does a lot of like the TV stuff. He did the Dead Rising Digital Deluxe Remaster, Adam Sandler's special. He reviewed that. Prior to that, he did Expeditions Mud Runner, Bluey the video game. He is not one of their main reviewers, to be very, very clear. Fortnite Festival, reviewed that. I think the reason they gave this to him is because he does a lot of movies, so he's probably a movie buff. That seems to be what I'm getting from this. I think he's a movie buff, and so they had him review this. Does that mean that you'll agree with him? Not necessarily. You know, it's not like this is one of their main go-to reviewers. He is a senior editor on the reviews team, but I don't think he typically is the one that does many of these himself. But there's other reviewers that are listed in the Metacritic, for example, that have reviewed a lot more and more consistently. Josh West, for example, that pretty much runs Games Radar. He's the one that gave it a perfect score over on Games Radar. But to be fair, he says,
donated 100 Australian
oh, geez, dude.
Super chat. Nice to catch a live stream. Been a heavy year at work. My friend hope Yoibear doing well and the family are good.
Oh yeah, we're rocking and rolling. We're gonna go on a little mini vacation this weekend. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be really, really good. And thank you, very, very generous. My goodness, Sean, thank you. But I thought this was funny. He's like, the best indie or best adventure indie has embarked on in over 30 years. I was like, that really is not a high standard. Like, that really is not saying much, but okay. If you said ever, okay, that's a statement, but it's the best thing that's happened when you compare it to the massive flops that everyone hated. You know, it does seem like this is connecting at least with old school fans. And that's one thing I've noticed is most of the reviewers from the big sites are from the generation that probably grew up on Indiana Jones, probably born in the 80s or late 70s. And a lot of those people are really clicking with it. The younger audience, there are some of them that are eating it up and absolutely loving it. I think they're loving it for just being a solid game. And so if you are an indie fan who appreciates solid games, it seems like you're going to be very, very excited for this. And those people, when that crosses over, those that like these kind of stealth games with lots of puzzles, those people are given this like game of the year, which is interesting. I mean, I think we all were just like, it's probably going to come out and be just because that's what we've been conditioned to expect with indie. Frankly, a lot of the previews looked pretty A lot of the stealth AI and stuff looks but it's like I said in the Skeptical Look video that I did, where I was like, there's a chance that this is just one of those games that looks clunky as hell when you're watching it, but when you play it, it doesn't feel that way. It might just be one of those games. And it seems like it apparently is. When people actually play it and put their hands on the controller, they connect with it much more.
The Great Circle with a fantastic sense of scale. Looking up in awe of the Great Pyramid or staring out at...
How dare you? Oh my God. Does anyone know what he just did? I cannot believe this was allowed to be published. Yeah, at the Pyramid Necropolis, there are different pyramids, okay? Okay, they're not all the same. They're not all the same. Some of them are bigger. Some of them are smaller. I was hoping there would be like a clearly labeled one. Oh, nope. Oh God, I'm breaking everything. Go back a tab. Okay. Google's freaking out on me. Okay, we'll move on. But then I'm gonna do a whole separate diatribe when we play this, rambling about the pyramid complex, okay?
Or staring out at a giant Nazi battleship perched atop a mountain in the Himalayas simply has a more pronounced effect at eye level. It also does wonders for immediacy, with puzzle solving in particular benefiting greatly. Picking up and poring over documents and clues, directly manipulating and placing objects, and watching the results unfold in front of your eyes makes it feel like you're personally inside some of the world's most expensive escape rooms. Puzzles come regularly, and they're mostly light lifting, but I've encountered at least a couple of slightly curlier ones that left me smugly satisfied that I wasn't stumped. If you do hit a roadblock, there's a baked-in hint system that will only interject if you take an extra photo of the offending puzzle with your in-game camera. It's a smart and courteous way of offering aid only when asked that will keep players off their phones and in the game. On top of this, it's really the best showcase for the incredible amount of granular detail Machine Games has stuffed into seemingly every surface in the Great Circle. From streak marks on freshly wiped glass to the slow trickle of wax from a candle lighting your way down an ancient stairwell.
See, that's pretty. It's hard to tell the smudge marks and stuff because this is 2024. The whole point is these games run at 4K 60 and we're publishing at 1080. The bitrate looks like it's for a 720p video. Like, what are we doing? Man.
In the Great Circle. From streak marks on freshly wiped glass to the slow trickle of wax from a candle lighting your way down an ancient stairwell, these are things that wouldn't be noticed from any other viewpoint. Are they entirely necessary to make the Great Circle a great game? Maybe not, but they do paint a picture of a project where no flourish is too small if they make the world look and feel a fraction more authentic.
Classic indie.
Nazi idiots. I missed this.
After beginning with a short flashback to Raiders of the Lost Ark as a tutorial, one that might have been a tad indulgent had it not been so utterly well done, the Great Circle's second level is a wonderful and equally nostalgic trip through Connecticut's Marshall College. It's a magnificent rendition and draped in layers upon layers of bespoke details that distracted me constantly on my way to the objective. Busts and other paraphernalia related to the history of the school, cabinets full of exotic items, notice boards cluttered with handmade signs. If you'd shown this version of Indy's famous school to the 8-year-old version of me who cut his teeth aimlessly point-and-clicking his way around Marshall College in 1989's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade: The Graphic Adventure, I might have had you burnt at the stake, or at least lowered into a sacrificial lava pit without a heart. The eye-catching environments keep coming. The ornate Italian architecture and crusty catacombs of Vatican City, an ancient town and multiple...
Okay, this is a better angle. This is a better angle for me to geek out. Earlier, he showed the clip right there. He showed that clip, and he said, in the shadow of the Great Pyramid or whatever. That, sir, with the casing stones on top, that is not the Great Pyramid. It's one of them, but that's not the Great Pyramid. That is the Pyramid of Khafre. The one to the right over there without the big casing stones on the top, that's the Great Pyramid of Khufu. They're different, okay? In all the pictures, you know, it looks like they're kind of the same, but they're not. I found a picture that they'll demonstrate this. Kind of put them side by side. Yeah, here. So, like, you see this? Pyramid of Khufu, it doesn't have the casing stones on top. It's just the big pyramid that sits to the right of it. And then the Pyramid of Khafre is the one behind the Sphinx. That's one where the debate is like, oh, did Khafre build the Sphinx, or was it already there? Because the way it's set up is like, this is totally useless information, but I'm going to tell you anyways, and you're going to like it. So like Khufu's pyramid is here, right? Big old pyramid. The Sphinx is like right, maybe if we go like right here, and then Khafre's pyramid is right here, and that's this one with the casing stones. So Khufu right there, Khafre right there, Sphinx is here, And then there's this really weird like pathway that just stretches around the Sphinx to go up. It's this big roadway basically that would have carried the stones from the river docks up to the pyramid. So people think, some archaeologists think that the Sphinx predates all of that because it was already there, which is why they had to build around it instead of building this road at a weird angle and then building the Sphinx later. But that's a whole other thing. Okay, that's a whole other thing. My point is, it's not the Great Pyramid. That was the Pyramid of Khafre. Great Pyramid's over here.
Nazi dig sites in the shadow of the Egyptian pyramids and the Great Sphinx. Sukkotai's winding waterways and flooded temples, which are being reclaimed by the jungle. It's all excellent stuff and bolstered by exemplary ray trace lighting to boot. I love the huge contrasts between the levels. And the Great Circle, as a fanciful archaeological concept, is an admirably effective premise to justify indie hopping all over the globe during a single story.
Aim for something soft.
The strength of that
What a great scream effect. Wow. They really, I mean, that was very indie. The oversized scream, the weird one-liner, that was
story.
Aim for something soft.
The strength of that story here is one of the Great Circle's true assets, and it's been brought to life with some very impressive performances. For the most part, Troy Baker's Harrison Ford impersonation is close to spot on, and Baker's otherwise distinct voice disappears in the role.
Legend says that the Great Circle does have some power, something about its geometry, a deeper force that connects these sites.
Credit too must go to voice actor David Shaughnessy, whose unerring version of Denholm Elliott's Marcus Brody may go criminally unnoticed in Baker's shadow.
Latin? Well, that is a novelty.
This
It is. Every time I hear Troy Baker's performance here, though, I am shocked that it's him. It really does sound like him. Like,
would have very
it's
much felt
very
like
impressive.
a gimmick, considering Elliott passed away back in 1992. But Brody's small role feels meaningful and respectful, and not like a stunt.
Can't just run away from your problems, Indiana.
Marios Gavrilis also kills it as the slimy and sinister Nazi archaeologist Emmerich Voss. He spits his dialogue with such venom, I imagine his microphone may have required a tiny umbrella.
Kirche, haben Sie das verstanden?
Most of the meaningful conversations occur in well-directed cutscenes, which are on par with those in modern Wolfenstein, albeit punctuated with an appropriate amount of slightly slapstick Indiana Jones humor when the fists start flying. There are basically two
Wilhelm scream.
movies worth of cutscenes here, but it never felt like too much. This is Indy in his prime, and I'm on board for every extra minute of it.
More of a dog person.
As a rule, the Indiana Jones series is always at its best when it involves a desperate race to track down an artifact before the Nazis can nab it for what they believe will be an unbeatable world-conquering advantage. Those movies were video game fetch quests before video game fetch quests, and the Great Circle naturally embraces it, immediately beginning on the right foot by setting its action in 1937, directly between the events of Raiders and the Last Crusade as the world simmers towards the Second World War. It's honestly quite remarkable how convincingly.
Also, this fur hat looks way better than it did in that trailer preview thing they did. I wonder if this is PC footage versus... Does it say? No, he played it on Series X. Yeah, this already looks way better than it did. You remember how it looked like it was made with like scales? Like it was all white and silvery scales? Like, ugh.
The Great Circle
looks way
fits
better.
into the hole between those two impeccable films, successfully exploiting the odd chronology of the original Indy trilogy. That goes far beyond just providing a little extra context on Indy's separation from Marion Ravenwood too. In fact, one of the greatest compliments I can pay The Great Circle is that it may well be the best Indiana Jones movie you've never seen. The music too is a victory on all fronts, and I love how in sync it feels with Raiders and the Last Crusade. I was especially thrilled to see The Great Circle crescendo to a showdown that follows tightly in the footsteps of both of those films, yet still managed to knock me out.
That was weird. I think it's going to be one of those games where, like, if you want to nitpick and pull stuff apart, there will be plenty. But It's campy and unapologetically campy. So if you're looking for that fun, just Indiana Jones adventure, understanding it's not going to be like a Naughty Dog super gritty experience, you can probably have a really good time with it. Just a fun game. And I think that is kind of refreshing. And again, I cannot stress enough just how awesome it is to see a surprise from a release this year. Like so far this year, we've had a couple of surprises with like Pal World, where it comes out of nowhere, or Helldivers, which kind of comes out of nowhere to blow up and be huge. But for the most part, it seems like every time we get a big game that people are interested in, it kind of lands with a little bloop, and then it's just gone. But this is a pleasant surprise where it is significantly better than I think the average person was expecting it to be based on the previews. And maybe there's a lesson to be taken from that, where we could look at like the trailers, the previews, how they marketed this. Did they do something wrong, or did they try to pitch this in a way to lower expectations so that people would be all the more surprised when it comes out and is solid? I don't know if it was intentional, or like I said in that Skepta Look video, maybe this is just one of those games that looks weird and clunky as hell when you're watching it, but when you play it, it's fun. And there's a lot of games like that, and maybe this is just one of those.
Yeah, with a brilliantly unexpected twist.
Out of my way, pal!
On the topic of knockouts, combat in The Great Circle is satisfyingly brutal without being gratuitously violent, which is in keeping with its family-friendly, swashbuckling adventure serial roots. I love the deeply impressive sound design, which makes every strike sound like a golf club being slammed into a huge bunch of celery.
Oh, du willst kämpfen?
And I love
After that, you want to fight me? Yeah.
how visceral the fighting is in first person. You block and parry blows with the correct timing and deliver quick jabs and loaded up power punches. On top of that, Indy's bullwhip can be used to quickly disarm enemies and stun them long enough to either wade in and whack them or scoop up their dropped weapon and bludgeon them with it. I enjoy how Butcher Bay adjacent the fighting is, but I'm a little unconvinced by the stamina system that rules over it, which depletes as Indy exerts himself climbing, sprinting, and throwing hands. It just creates pauses throughout the action where you'll be compelled to wait for a beat, or jog backwards as a gaggle of goose-stepping morons march towards you with their dukes up. I can't really detect what it adds other than something to be arbitrarily upgraded to the point where it's no longer an inconvenience. Combat escalates with your actions, so if you do grab a gun and start blasting, expect all armed enemies in your vicinity to respond with hot lead of their own. Indy can't survive this kind of barrage.
Now a member.
Ooh, thank you. Anon just became a member at the show-off tier. Anon is officially better than all of us. Anon is officially better.
So, for the most part, the best thing to do is forget the firearms. This does admittedly create a bit of silliness if you stir up a large enemy response and park yourself anywhere your attackers need to climb to.
Hold on, say that again.
Do is forget the firearms. This does admittedly respond with hot lead of their own. Indy can't survive this kind of barrage, so for the most part, the best thing to do is forget the firearms. This does admittedly create a bit of silliness if you stir up a large enemy response and park yourself anywhere your attackers need to climb to reach. You can, for instance, stand at the top of a ladder and clobber the crap out of everyone who climbs it for some time, and no one will figure out that they have guns and can simply shoot at you, on regular difficulty at least.
I mean, that just seems stupid. I mean, that just seems dumb. He says at least on regular difficulty, so does that mean on harder difficulties, in this case, they would take their guns out of their holsters and shoot you? Is that what he's implying? The only reason they're not doing, like, going for lethal is because of the difficulty level? I guess, but, like, this just seems really dumb. Like, this is what we saw in the previews, was really weird, stupid behavior that was alluded to by some reviewers and some people who previewed it, who pointed out that like the AI is kind of dumb. They don't respond in a way you would expect, where, you know, you punch them, you whip the gun out of their hand, they drop it to the ground and they don't try to pick it up. They just decide to punch you instead. Things like that. And this is like a really like egregious example of that. I mean, The takeaway from all these reviews, because spoiler, they're gonna rate this a 9. So they, not a 1. That's just what the preview says. But I guess they're suggesting that this type of thing is not disruptive enough to like pull you out of it or upset you. I guess that's what it means.
And clobber the crap out of everyone who climbs it for some time. And no one will figure out that they have guns and can simply shoot at you, on regular difficulty at least. But you'd be colouring outside the lines here, playing like this. Indy doesn't mind leaving bodies in his wake when necessary, but he's not some moustache-twirling mass murderer. You can always fire up Wolfenstein if you need to get some of that out of your system. On the topic of guns though, Indy's personal revolver is, sadly, a big disappointment. I used it all of twice, but both were total anticlimaxes. The first was an early boss battle where Indy's pistol really should have been written out of the fight before the showdown began. After placing several bullets into a man's unarmored head, it became clear that shooting this bloke wasn't the way Machine Games intended me to clear this encounter.
Yeah, I mean, that's just stupid. That's bad.
The second was late in the story, where I thought there's no point rolling credits with revolver rounds in the cylinder, and figured I'd quickly plug 2 Nazis that suddenly appeared ahead of me in an open elevator. They simply took too many shots to go down. It seems like a weird fumble when the scene of Indy actually using his pistol and taking out the Raiders swordsman in a single shot is one of the most memorable moments in the whole film franchise. Revolver rounds should absolutely remain
What was that dog leg? Did you see
most
that?
memorable moments in the whole film franchise. Revolver
Watch the dog's leg. Wait for it. I have a question. Oh, maybe it's a feature because he's a Nazi dog. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he's like saluting the Fuhrer. Maybe that's what that is. I feel like there's a lot of overlooking like pretty serious weird problems the deeper into this review we get, but I guess the takeaway is they don't care, or it doesn't affect your overall enjoyment of the game. Because, like, look at this. All 3 legs glitch up into its body. Like, it's noticeable. He should be charging you. Instead, he's just turning off. There's the stuff with, like, the enemies that just file one by one up the ladder to you. Like, to me, that stuff seems like it should be a bigger deal. Or shooting, you know, the guy multiple times in the face. If you don't want people to shoot him to beat the boss fight, just don't give Indy his gun or ammo for it. Like, it's just weird.
Revolver rounds should absolutely remain exceedingly rare, but the pistol itself really should have shipped with the stopping power of its cinematic counterpart.
Yeah, make ammo really tough. Maybe he has like 5-6 rounds for the entire level, like the entire Vatican section or the entire Egyptian section and something like that. So you can use it and it'll be like a one-stop, boom, you're down, he's dead. But you need to use it very sparingly, and it makes so much noise that it alerts everybody. But at least when you choose to use it, it's effective. I think that makes more sense.
It also rarely feels logical that high-ranking enemies within the levels can automatically see through disguises, particularly in Vatican City. It is a mechanic I'm accustomed to thanks to the likes of Hitman, which, I'll be clear, is another game I love, but it's definitely a little sillier here. It really is total nonsense that a random Italian officer would physically attack a stranger who is, for all intents and purposes, a visiting priest. This is only a mild annoyance though, and to be fair, the Great Circle actually has a very smart approach to difficulty overall. There's a lot more fiddling you can do than just adjust a single setting from easy to very hard. Enemy attributes are split into several categories, meaning you can tweak it so there are tougher enemies, but fewer of them. Maybe you want to pump up their awareness, but leave them weaker than wet newspapers. This is something I think I may try for a second run. It's good that these options are here because on regular difficulty, the stealth is quite basic. Enemies have pretty limited vision, and they're easier to sneak past than I first assumed. I definitely became progressively less cautious once I realized I could sneak across seemingly dangerously open places as long as I did it fast enough.
Like, again, I feel like they're pointing out some like really severe shortcomings in the gameplay department, especially with AI, which is what we saw in the previews. I thought when I saw this 9 out of 10 review, it was like, oh, they fixed all that. But no, it seems like all that's there. It just doesn't matter.
That said, the Great Circle does allow us to return to previously visited locations to complete all the extra side missions, even after the main adventure is complete. So I may focus on that instead of starting over. I suspect I have many more hours of auxiliary objectives to keep me busy. I only got around to ticking off a handful of them on my first run through the story, which took me about 17 hours.
About 17 hours.
Indiana Jones and the Great Circle nails nearly everything about the best parts of the storied franchise upon which it's based, from the title card and location fonts to Harrison Ford's finger waggle. But its successes go way beyond its faithfulness to the finer points of the films. With a host of gorgeous and lavishly detailed levels, satisfying combat hinged on jaw-breaking haymakers, and a focus on slow-paced exploration, platforming, and puzzle solving, interspersed with a handful of high-voltage action scenes, The Great Circle is an irresistible and immersive global treasure hunt for indie fans who felt underserved by the likes of The Dial of Destiny and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Moreover, it sets itself apart from this decade's increasingly homogenized third-person action games by opting for a classic first-person perspective inspired by the likes of the Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay. If you butt your head against its generally basic stealth systems, cracks will show. But when played as intended, The Great Circle immediately ranks amongst the best Indiana Jones games ever, and it—
Oh, so if you have a problem with that, you're playing it wrong. Oh. If you play it as intended. Is that what he said?
The Great Circle basic stealth systems, cracks will show. But when played as intended, The Great Circle immediately ranks amongst the best Indiana Jones games ever, and its story is closer to Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade than anything that's come after. Some pundits may claim it belongs in a museum, but museums are for dusty old relics you shouldn't ever touch. The Great Circle doesn't belong in a museum. It belongs on your hard drive, where you can play the heck out of it.
I mean, so I appreciate them showing this stuff, because showing this stuff, oops, I pressed the wrong button. Showing this stuff at least lets us get a better idea of what we're getting into, right? Like, it certainly seems that combat wise, you know, things are really clunky. I still, the stupid dog just makes me laugh. Shooting this guy in the face, like, just take my revolver away. Like, shooting him point blank in the face like that twice, and he's just like, meh. That just feels weird. Like, don't even bother. Same with this. Like, they mentioned 2 or 3 different times the problems with the AI and being able to just openly sneak past people, or with this, like, they just walk up the stairs and then you push them down. This is stuff you could do in Star Wars Outlaws that we ripped that game apart for. But we're just not going to say anything here, or we're going to say something, but it doesn't affect the overall experience, I guess. You know, maybe the story really is that good that it doesn't matter, or maybe the environments otherwise are so detailed. But like, even this guy, you see him walking around, he's just pacing. All of his friends are over here holding shovels and keep walking up and getting pushed down the ladder. It seems like that should be a bigger, there should be a bigger response, but I don't know. I don't know. Either way, the people that play the game all the way through, the consensus right now, despite these shortcomings and problems, seems to be that despite those issues and clunkiness and all that, it still is enjoyable. It still is worth going through. And that, I think, is interesting, because it makes me wonder, okay, like, is it actually going to deliver on that level? Or, you know, is this something where it's going to be another Deathloop situation? Because if you recall, there was another game that got tons of critical acclaim. And then when kind of average gamers played it, they found it very lackluster. And that was Deathloop, where it got tons of 10 out of 10 scores. People said it was the greatest thing that they had ever, the developers Arcane had ever made. And then when the public got their hands on it, the AI was so bad, it was a big problem. There were technical issues that weren't really called out by a lot of outlets and stuff. And It's interesting. It's interesting to see if there's maybe going to be some of that here, because it does seem like if you are willing to overlook the bad AI, if you're willing to overlook some of this stuff, other reviews also bring up technical issues and glitches and lack of optimization, stuff like that. So maybe if you're able to overlook that, then you can enjoy it much more. But it always surprises me when I hear reviewers describe like what seemed to me to be like pretty significant issues, and then like, yep, so 9 out of 10. Yeah, it always just surprises me, because I'm like, I would have thought that would have a bigger deal or bigger impact. But interesting. Maddie gave it high praise. The Kind of Funny guys apparently didn't love it. They gave it like a 7. They said it was just kind of as a lot of people expected. So I'm going to try it. See what I think of it. I'm interested because, again, it's ancient Egypt. Like, letting you go to Egypt alone makes me excited or interested. But if it, like, the AI stuff is something that I just, once I notice it, I can't unsee it, and it can spoil an otherwise, like, pretty solid game for me. And if they have similar problems, I mean, that's going to be a thing. I saw a headline that called the game torture. Oh, really? Let's see. Let's chat. I think the reason the AI doesn't bother me is because it makes the combat scenarios more fun/funny. It's more of a sim feel, and if the AI were super good, it would make the stealth not fun. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's an option for difficulty settings where you could crank it. I do think like totally realistic stealth is not necessarily fun. I agree. I think there's perhaps a fine line between fun AI and then just dumb AI. And if they're saying that like, no, the AI was designed to work in this sort of stupid, abusable way because that's what's more enjoyable, maybe there is something there. But I think that's just really a difficult thing to pin down. It's very arbitrary, you know, because it's like, okay, well, this is fun AI. This is bad AI. Like, where's the line? It's just, I don't know. That's tricky. He took my thing.